Today on the Bob Dodd Show, we have a special guest, my friend Ross Jones. He's a professional baseball player, key grip, one heck of a dude. Glad to have him in the studio. Everybody, welcome Ross Jones. Yeah, so, dude, Ross, please introduce yourself.
Well, Ross Jones, somebody who worked with you on set and key grip in the motion picture industry. Another lifetime, a former professional baseball player, and lived in Atlanta for, I guess it's about 9 years now after growing up in South Florida, being Miami based and then living in Fort Lauderdale for most of the time.
Yeah, and being a grip has been in your blood, right?
Oh yeah, I came in the business the old-fashioned way. I was related in, and I didn't do a lot when I was younger because my dad and uncle owned a company for a long time, but I was playing sports year-round, so it wasn't until I was playing professionally and actually had an off season that I had something. I was like, oh, I could go to work in commercials with my dad or on a show that he was working on, and then eventually Miami Vice was shooting in Miami for a while, and when I was in between seasons, I would work on that show in whatever department needed extra guys. So that's how I got started into it.
Yeah, very fortunate I got to see you to how you do things, and I saw how inventive you were and how you handled issues that came your way. And I feel like a lot of key grips that handle things like yours, like the problems that you might have seeing on Superman, you don't just come up with that. That's like a family run gambit, like the way that you're able to handle all that. Well, so it's pretty interesting.
It's just something you kind of come up with over time, and working with a lot of different people gives you learn so much about how different people react to different situations. Early on, I worked for the same guy all the time, so I saw one way of doing things. When I started working for some other people, whether it was in a commercial or California guys or New York guys would come into South Florida and you'd work with them and you go, oh, there's different ways to do things, or this guy's a little rougher in how he handles things, this guy's softer, and you just learn, you take a little bit from everybody. And plus the DPs, the people you're working for, are different.
Yeah.
So you have to learn to be a chameleon a little bit. It's like, oh, this production company behaves this way, so they are expecting me to kind of do things in a certain way. You kind of have to, I don't think if in my position or in our position, when you're on the crew below the line, that you can do things one way and like think that that's going to work all the time. You have to be a little bit flexible in how you react to people and situations. But our business is, oh, we thought we were going to do this, now we're not. What can you come up with? And like anybody can be good if everything you plan works exactly the way you did. The difference makers are, and I'm sure you saw it with Kent and the guys you're working with, when they throw you a curveball, who can react to those and come up with something that day to make a plan, or that week that, depending on how long you have to attack the problem, will be how you approach it.
Yeah. I seen you I was completely impressed. I mean, especially like first time meeting Scott too, like the dynamic that your team brought. I got to see some things that I've just never seen before in the film world. And you guys handled a lot, because
Scott's a force of nature. He's kind of a unique individual. He's one of the, as far as camera movement goes, he's one of the handful of guys you would say in the business is a difference maker. And he is really creative. He's been challenged in so many different ways when he built his company, Cinemoves, and other things and he's worked for a lot of different people, that he's came up with so many different ways to solve different challenges. And he just fit right in with what Henry was throwing at him, because we were coming up with some things on the day a lot of times that we hadn't been prepared for.
Yeah. You had a really good team. Just looking back at all the things that we did in Cleveland, and pretty much I want to say that because of your grip team and you and Scott's grip team, because of that, and Kent, that whole system, I mean, you didn't feel much of the bumps that were coming your way, or I should say from an outsider looking in. And that's not a norm for the film industry.
No,
Yeah.
I think one of the things, like if you're not involved in all the discussions and what's going on,
Hmm.
but you don't notice that anything out of the ordinary is going on, that's kind of a tip of your hat to,
Yeah.
what Scott would pull off and Kent would pull up, and Fig, who was our best boy, and some of the stuff they were coming up, covering
She's
us
great.
on and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
she's another force of nature. She just impressed me so much. And so we were like, and plus, the crew people we had,
Hmm.
Robbie, there were so many, good grips and what we
Yeah.
were doing. But the rigging, that show was dependent on the rigging having everything prepared. We were really adventurous in the sets they were building and what they asked for to be ready to be able to do. But honestly, the rigging crew was really kind of amazing. Between Grip
Yeah.
and Electric and that, what they pulled off in those stages was pretty impressive.
Yeah. Kent was definitely, um, once again, something I just didn't see before. And I feel like I've worked on caliber projects that would meet Superman, you know, but with Kent and Steve and Kent having Slink and Nando and just the all around grip crew that they had, I asked, I was like, Kent, how did you pick all these people? And he's like, well, things just work out the way they work out
Yeah.
sometimes, and I didn't realize Kent just didn't know everybody.
Hmm.
He had his couple guys that he brought in from LA and then all the local Atlanta boys
Hmm.
who I consider my friends.
Hmm.
It's like, I would have picked this crew if I was keying. This is a great crew. And he's like, yeah, it just happened that way.
Sometimes you like to think that you pre-planned everything, but sometimes you just have to get lucky and you get the right people. And sometimes, certain guys not working out, you slide out one guy,
Hmm.
you slide another guy in, or you realize that's not his strength, so I put him over on this crew because they're doing this, and you make sure that you have the guys that you need when, oh, this is a tricky rig that we're doing, and so you kind of finagle your way around in how you put your resources at each problem. But it always amazed me that we would come in some days and they would ask for some change, and I'm like, how are we going to do that? And it
Hmm.
would be done an hour later. It was like, oh, well, we're doing it. And I'm like, oh, didn't think that was going to be that easy. And of course I wasn't there to see all of the struggles to get there, but it always amazed me, because I kind of thought that even as talented as the people we were working with, I think they got used to the fact that they could ask for anything and the crew could pull it off.
Yeah.
And so they kind of were like, hey, no matter what, we're going to ask them. They'll figure out a way to do it. And, luckily the heads of department were so good and prepared and had enough resources close by, and we were able to handle most of the stuff they asked for in a timely fashion. But that's what's so tricky about the business. And whenever any production people give us a problem and say, why do you guys have all this stuff? And we go, because we can't be sure what you're going to ask us to do.
Yeah.
If you could guarantee that the things you asked us for is all you're going to ask us for, we could get rid of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's not the real way, the way that the business works.
Hmm.
And there's so many things you can't even control too. Oh, we thought it was going to be a sunny day, but now it's overcast and we're shooting here. There's things you have to be prepared, to do. And the difference makers are the guys who can go with those changes and come up with something workable really quickly.
On the electric side too, with Dan and the Big Red Machine, Ed, my gosh, they had a good crew too. I feel like Superman somehow lucked out and they were able to receive a lot of good talent that was in Atlanta. And there's a lot of good talent
Hmm.
in Atlanta. But just like all around, like there's two productions that I worked on that uh, really left a mark on me in a good way. The very first one that I'll talk about was like Ozark. When I was working on that, I was working with a key grip, Landon Riddell, and that whole entire program that Ozark had was a tight knit family kind of feel. And when I left Ozark, and they weren't going to be doing anymore, we did the last season. We realized that we weren't really ever going to be on a show like that again. That it might not ever exist. And then I landed a gig on Electric State, and I was driving truck on that show. And once again, it was like a different part of the circle where everything on that show on my end that I was experienced was like, I'm never going to be on another show that went this way and this good before. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I landed Superman. And then all these awesome people that I got to meet and friends that I knew. And it's just like reminded me of that cliche thing that a lot of movie people do. It's like, oh man, I love you. I love you. And all these I love yous. And oh, I can't wait to do it on the next one. And it's like, you go on the next show and you're like, what was that guy's name again? And I feel like 3 of those shows back to back to back, it really left a mark in such a good way for me that like it really cemented me in Atlanta. It's like what good people, good talent, and great shows that were here.
Yeah, you need to appreciate it when they happen because they don't come along that often. It's rare that you get that many in a row like that, that you had that feeling. I've had probably 4 or 5 my whole career over 40 years that, you felt that way. And when you do, I had a TV show that was like that. The Truman Show that I worked on was like that, where I actually, we were out of town and doing 5 days. And I was almost wishing we were working 6 days because it was like, I miss the guys when I'm not there,
Yeah.
And when you're in a really good crew for a while and you leave, it's weird that you're not going to see those people again. You get so used to spending so many hours a day together. And then when it ends and you all go your separate, maybe you get 4 or 5 guys on a crew on this next project or something, but it's rare that you get a lot of them back together again. But when production treats you well and everybody gets along and there's no yellers and screamers and it's fun and you're part of the creative process and you're enjoying what you're doing, you got to really enjoy those because sometimes it is more like work. But when you get those that it's like you just enjoy seeing everybody every day, you got to really learn to, I always tell my crew, it's like, remember these shows. You don't get them that often, but enjoy it while it's happening.
Yeah. And you yourself, like, cause like you're part of Sin Moves in a really cool fashion where I mean, you have all your equipment that you have to take care of. You have all these things that are going on in your life with all of stuff that deals with being a key grip. And when I talk to you, especially like on the phone, and I hear the enjoyment in your voice just about like going through your tools and making things straight. And it brings evokes this emotion out of me. It's like, man, I miss being a grip. I miss hanging out with the fellas. And I wish that I could be closer and all these emotions, go through you. And I think that happens a lot with the film community. We do learn this skill of like building this tight bond with each other and then letting it go. Like, I don't know too many people that are outside the film industry other than some construction jobs where you get hired and fired all in the same program. It's like, I had a fella, he was named Trent. I was working for a drilling company and he was like, man, Bob, so sorry, man. I had to make a list today. And like, he was being so vague for the first like 3 minutes of the conversation. I just had to say, what's up, dude? And he was like, oh man, I'm gonna have to let you go. And I was like, oh dude, that's okay. Cool, man. Thank you for having me on. Like, I appreciate the opportunity to come work with you guys. And his demeanor kind of changed. Like, what? Like, normally people like curse me out or say, how can you do that to me? I got kids. But I took it the way movie people would take it. And he wasn't prepared for that. What kind of things do you think that like movie people have to deal with that like normal people just don't have to deal with?
Well, our business is different in a way that, number one, we can't create our own work. We're reliant on somebody coming in to do a project in our area or somebody who's willing to take us out of town to do a job. But it's like you need a production company that's coming in to do it. And so we're reliant on somebody coming in, but it's not permanent. But also, as we've grown up in the business, you've gone on jobs where you've been what we call a day player. Just you're not scheduled to be on every day. You're just a day or two here or there. So we're kind of used to coming and going in different crews and different things. But I think the other part is you just have to, like, you you were looking at it from that person's perspective. You
Mhm.
saw something coming and you go, "Oh, I get it." You know, you're not doing this just because you don't want me around anymore. That's a different thing. That's where
Yeah.
you're being chosen to be. We just don't want you here anymore. And so when you can see it from other people's perspectives, that you know that, oh, you know, this job is going to last for a certain period of time, and we can't always tell exactly how many people we need this day or this day. You know, some days you're not supposed to be there, and all of a sudden, I've gone on jobs for one day and wound up never leaving.
Yeah.
And like, oh, we need you to stay and be on because the circumstances changed or something else happened, or they just decide, oh, you fit in here and this goes better when you're here. So our business is kind of set up that way. It just, and so you try not to take it too personally, you know, on things, but and it also depends on how the production people do it. They could come and get rid of you in a way that makes it very personal,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and so you're going to take it a certain way. So everything depends on how people interact with each other and everything. So, but I think it's more baked into our business where, you know, it's like it's sometimes, but it's not all the time, you know.
Yeah. I feel like, because I don't want to say I'm new into the industry. I have a handful of years, I have a bunch of years. I started in 2007 helping a relative of mine. He was rigging, rig gaffing. And so from that point, from when I first got the taste of just being on the film set, or, I remember telling somebody, they were like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, just all tooled up and ready to do rigging electric. And I didn't know what it was because it was my first time ever on a set. And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a gaffer." And he looks at me like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I deal with the lights."
Mhm.
And, like I remember those things, and how quickly I got jaded in maybe the first 3 years of my career when new people would come in. And I just sit there and think to myself, like, "Oh, yeah, you think you're going to come in out of school and, you're going to just be able to wash your hands of everything that's going on and just do it your way." Like, there's these cycles that I see in the film industry. And the I don't want to say like in the like 80s or 90s, there was like uh, better atmospheres, because I hear horror stories of
Oh,
productions in the 80s and 90s. But in the 90s, like a lot of the guys that I worked with came up in the movie industry and rock and roll in the 90s. So in the 2000s, by 2005, 2007, it was an old hat to them. And when all these new guys came in, especially at a small market in Pittsburgh, you had a couple people that took you underneath your wing, and then you had a couple people just like, "You ain't coming in my job.
mhm.
You're not coming here." And I have a nephew that's you know about to be 18, and he's going to be able to come. What kind of like struggles you think when especially with your family being in that? What kind of struggles you think came your way or came just in the industry? Because I know a lot of people are struggling with a lot of different things right now, and it's the lack of work.
Right now, there's always been these periods in the business of, you know, very hot, very cold, and it's got, you know, we're in a bigger dip now, and things are changing because internationally people are, you know, going different places to film things. There's been a lot of changes going on now that streaming has come into it, and you've got the old studio system, so the producers are kind of, you know, trying to figure out who has the power, where's the equilibrium in this market. So there's a lot of things going on where the downturns have been a little longer than normal, but they've always kind of been there. And the hard thing about the business is surviving through the slow periods long enough to still be viable when the work comes up. And Atlanta was so busy, and so many people joined the union that there was so many people in it that it's like there's just more of them to be out of work when it slows down. And who knows? 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that might have been the busiest we'll ever be in
Hmm.
Atlanta. Um, but you know, I'm hoping it's gonna eventually come back to get near. You know, even if it came back at 50, 70% of what it was, it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Um, but it's that's the hard part, is dealing with the uncertainty of the work. You've got uncertainty of hours, you know, so people, I've heard people complaining that, you know, about, oh, dealing with their kids or anything. This isn't a business that you can have regular childcare, or
Yeah.
you know, there's not many places that are going to accept when you drop off your children and you don't know when you're coming back, you know? So
Yeah, new guys coming in with girlfriends. I'm like, how long you been seeing that girl? You know, like you realize this production is going to chew you up and spit you out. Sometimes you have a good aftertaste. Sometimes you have a bad aftertaste, you know. I just feel like people always ask me, Bob, how do you stay so positive and like sun shining and roses when you talk about the film industry? And it's because I do believe in it. And I think the cream always rises to the top. So if you're good at something and that is useful to whatever crew you're with or whatever show you're on, you will be asked back. It might not be the next 3 shows, but you know, next time either, I don't know, the production comes back in 4 years, they'll be like, where's the Bob Dodd that helped us out? Or, you know, where's the Ross that helped us out?
I realized early on, I saw some people who were successful in the business and they weren't the best technicians. They were just good people to be around.
Yeah.
And when you realize that, especially when you're on a long-term project, people who have a choice about who works around them don't want to be around people who are no fun to be around.
Yeah.
I always say, if you're going to be a pain, you've got to be so good at what you do for people to put up with it, because most people would rather have somebody that's good as opposed to great, but fun to be around.
Yeah.
Because you're spending so much time with them. And so the business kind of weeds out those people, or at least holds them down to certain positions. And when you start raising up and getting to higher levels, the personality side becomes a big part of it, because production doesn't want to deal with you, or the DP doesn't want to deal with you, or the director is like, your energy's bringing us down around here, you know. So it's just those people tend to limit themselves in what they're doing, and then they think the business is out against them or whatever, and they wind up falling by the wayside an awful lot. But a lot of the times people just would, you know, even for me, when I'm hiring people, when I'm hiring my crew, I'll have my core group of people, and I'm a firm believer that when the crew gets along, everything is better. Yes. We work better, the work goes better, you know, we're not as miserable at work, even when things get hard, because sometimes they ask us to do hard things. There's no way around it. But if the crew gets along and watches each other's back, they figure out a way to do it. I've hired at times guys who were very good, but then I'll go up to my crew and I'll ask them, I'm like, what do you think? How's he fitting in? And they're like, he doesn't really mesh with our group. And I'll tell say, I don't need you after today. And they're like, what? I'm better than you. Yeah, but you don't get along with everybody, so the whole gets worse. Even though your individual is good, it ruined the rest. And I'm more worried about the overall. And so and I'll tell guys, I go, look, you may not want to work for me. Maybe I'm not the right cup of tea for you. You know, we'll figure that out along the way. But when I'm hiring new people, I'm like, I can't guarantee you this is for the run of the show, or you'll be on every project I do. We'll see how it goes and whether I'm a fit for you and you're a fit for my group. But I value the team dynamic. Sometimes some guys are individual players. They don't want to be in the team dynamic. I kind of weed those people out from my group, because I value, when I've got a crew I don't need to know what every guy's doing. Yeah. If some guy walks out to his car because he's got to make a phone call or go do something, but the rest of the crew covers him, and that's all I care about. Yeah. Does what I need getting done get done? I don't need to know about all the other little drama going on. I want my crew to have each other's back and do things. And you see it when we're having fun. Like some of the times we were off by ourselves in Cleveland and different stuff, but we were having fun what we were doing, waiting for.
Even when we were hustling, because the whole hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait, hurry up and build this, and we're not going to use it. Hurry up, tear it down because we need to do. When we did that one maneuver from downtown to the, what is that, the marina that we went to, we tore everything down, man. We're driving the Scoobies all the way down there. People were looking at us like, what is that?
Never seen that go down the road before.
And I just remember how much fun we had. Oh, remember that going to to the baseball field with the machines.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm sitting there driving the lull, and I got this big metal thing, and the cop just doesn't realize the law only drives a certain speed, and he's gone. I'm just driving alone down the street in this machine. People are like, "What is that?"
Mm-hmm.
No, we would hustle. We would have issues, but I just knew that whatever issue was coming our way, because of the team that was there, like I really felt no stress whatsoever. And man, like the only other time I felt these ways when I was with Landon and the rest of the grips. I mean, like those dudes are my brothers, and I love them. And then working on Electric State and working with the Teamsters there, and working with the base camp guys. You know, I was kind of alone in Electric State a little bit, but they all handled everything great. And if you needed something, they were there and ready to help you. I can remember some shows that it was not that way.
No, it's
And, you know, new people coming in, I always get asked a lot because like when I'm doing all my other jobs, they go, "Oh, you worked in the film industry? What do you do?" And it's like, "Oh, well, I gripped for a while, and I kind of did a lot of different things, but last few years I was a Teamster, and before that for 5 years I was a grip, and before that is all over the place, helping with grips, special effects, construction, whatever I could do, I would go do." And they're like, "Oh man, it's like, it seems so awesome." And I sit there and say, "You have a pretty cush job here. All you have to worry about is what you see in front of you, and there's nothing else. And you get paid decent. You don't have to worry about anything else." In the film industry, everybody has to worry about everything.
yeah. Well, but there are some people that job going to the same place every day would drive them crazy.
Sure. I'm
Like
one of them.
for
Yeah.
me, I've never had a job where I went to a place every day and did the same thing in an office. I've never had that. Even when we went to the stage, we were in a different
Mhm.
stage, or oh, we were doing this, we were doing flying sequences, and it was blue, and now we're making everything black and changing all this. Every shot is different. So even though you're in the same place, you're changing things. So there's a lot of people that part, appeals to people.
Mhm.
They like the fact of not doing the same thing over and over and
Yeah.
over again. I don't know that even being paid well, something else, it would have to benefit me enough in my personal life to make that work, but that would be a detriment to me.
Yeah.
So I like the changing circumstances of what we do. And oh, we go to stage one day, we go to location over here. Oh, we're taking off, we're going down to Macon. Now we're coming home for a day. Oh, now we're jumping on a plane, going to Cleveland. Those kind of things are more appealing to the people who get in this business and thrive at it
Yeah.
and what you're doing. And I'm a big believer is you have to understand the business you're getting into and understand what the positives and negatives are. Like I saw some people during the strike talking about how, oh, this isn't how I need, it should be better like this. And I'm like, that our business can't be like that.
Yeah.
It's very tough on certain people to do things. And it doesn't work for young women with children. That's a
Yeah.
hard thing. You have to figure out how you're going to deal with childcare, whether it's family, a nanny, or something. But there's no way for you, to do it easily.
Yeah.
You have to make some hard decisions in what you're doing. So the business isn't right for everybody. And there's some people that it's right for a few years in their life, and then they move on to something else because there's a conflict in it. So it just everybody has to understand. And then also, it's vastly different depending on which department you're in.
Personality, I think, weighs in too. Because, like, I'm married. I have 2 kids, and I feel like because of my wife and her ability to roll with all the punches, you know, um, if you find that person for you, it will work out for you.
Yeah.
You know, um, for folks who might be listening to this that um, might not understand what we're talking about, I would equate it to like a Marine having to leave on leave
Mhm.
for 3 or 6 months. And, you know, you might be able to talk to them once a week or once every month. Just it's similar to that in a sense where we are that busy. We're working that many hours when we're out, especially when we're going out of town. It's not like, some people, they'll go out to the bar, after working all day or whatever. But normally you can't because you got to save that energy for the next day because you're
Yeah.
doing 6, 7 day weeks.
A lot of times you're working and sleeping, and that's
Yeah.
all you're doing. You're waking up and you're turning around and going right back. And so everybody can't deal with that, and every family can't deal with that. I
That's
know.
true.
So that you have to have the right people that understand that, you know, I'm going to get some time off. The other, you know, the other positive side is in our business is you have the ability to say no if at
Hmm.
certain times. It's only happened to me a couple times where I've said no on a project because I had something planned with the family or done it. Um, but I had turned down. I had to tell my kids, "Oh, we can't go on that trip I was planning
Hmm.
on going on because I took this job." So, but there's a few times where I said, "Nope, I'm not telling my kids no on this one." I said, "Sorry, I can't do this job," because you don't know when the next one is. But it does give you the ability to say no to certain
Yeah,
things.
it really does.
And there was a period where I went away from the longer form of TV and movies where I just went in and did commercials when my kids were younger, where the jobs were a couple days here, or if I went out of town, it was for a weekend or maybe a week, not months. And so sometimes you change what you do in the business based on your family situation or things like that. But it's something you have to be aware of what you're giving up and what you what your family can fill in for. You know, if you have a strong wife that can deal with all that stuff on her own, great. Then
Yeah.
you can take jobs that, you know, require you to be away for a while, or you know you're not going to be around much even when you're in town because you're just, like I said, working and sleeping. Um, and we don't control our hours. There's not many people that leave for work and can't tell their spouse when they're coming home.
I made that completely clear to my wife, Angela. When I first went on a date with her, you put the best of yourself on for that person. And I remember I didn't necessarily tell her that I work in the film industry until I like actually met her. And I remember telling her like, "Hey, look, I like hanging out with you. I'd like to hang out with you again." She was like, "Well, okay. When are you doing this day?" I'm like, "I'm working." She's like, "Okay, well, like, call me when you get off. What time are you gonna get off?" I don't know what time I'm gonna get off. And when someone says that to you, you're like, uh, he doesn't know when he's getting off, and you're just not in the film industry. That something's fishy up with that.
They think you're not being truthful with them, that you don't want to tell them the truth, and they don't realize, no, unfortunately, this is the truth.
Yeah.
I've been in that situation a few times where, or you're dating somebody new and you're like, "Oh, I just got called for this job and I'm going to."
Hmm.
You just said yes. I go, "Yeah, that's what I do."
Hmm.
But you didn't talk to me about it. I go, "I didn't know I had to get permission to go do that. This is how I make a living. This is where,
Yeah,
you
this
know."
is, I can't ask you yes or no. I have to say yes to this because I'm available and I want
Mhm.
to do it. Yeah, like I remember the first time I stopped calling, or I would text her like, "Hey, it's the Abbey," or I would call her
Mhm.
like, "Hey," and I stopped because for some reason, movies and TV shows, they would call Abby and then they would call the Martini, and you would still be there 2 hours after all of
You could
that.
be on the last shot, but that doesn't mean it's going to be fast. It's
Yeah. And like, like, "Hey babe, I'll be home at like 2:30, like I'll see you at 2:30 a.m., if you can stay up or I'll wake you up." Like, "Yeah, wake me up, wake me up." And by the time you get home, like on that drive home, you're like, "Yeah, it's my girlfriend. Oh, this is gonna be awesome. Just kiss her goodnight." And by the time you get home, you get in the garage and you're like, I'm so tired right now. Babe, I love you. I'm gonna go to sleep." She's like, "Are you gonna get a shower? You stink." It's like, "I'll get a shower tomorrow morning." Like, because you just busted your tail for,
Mhm.
14, 15 hours and drove an hour and 40 minutes to work and an hour and 40 minutes back.
Mhm.
Like that's
No,
bringing up memories.
it's tough on family situations, and it's, that's there's a lot of things that the business, it can't be good for because it can't it just it's not set up to be, to be take that into consideration. And so once you get into it, you have to understand how you're going to deal with, that the schedule and what it means for family and everything. So if both members are in the film business, that's real craziness, so.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Especially having like I remember someone telling me, never have a girlfriend that is in the same industry as you. And I'm like, "Why? You're in the same industry as me. Like, what did your wife do?" "Oh, my wife, she's does something else, whatever. She's not in the film industry." And I said, "Why?" This is me being green, like, A, you'll never see them. And when you do see them, it's not going to be quality time because both you guys are going to be grumpy and like wanting to go to the next show the next morning and not be late. And like, I like kind of like took that like, oh man, is this industry right for me? You know, because there's so many different types of people at work, and you do connect with a lot of people. Not saying you want to date everybody there, but like you do connect people and you want to hang out with people. And then it came down to me like, you could either spend too much time with somebody at work, or you don't spend enough time with them at home. Like it's really strange. So people who like work and play together, I notice that they have a different dynamic, and there are different types of people.
There's no hard and fast rules because depending on which departments people in, there are ways that it can work. There are some people that aren't on set every day and doing different things. So it really depends on the type of work that you're doing. But yeah, it's very difficult if you have kids, to both be in, because just the schedules are too unpredictable in what you're doing. So for a while I had, my ex was a stunt woman, and so she wasn't at work all the time. Then she kind of morphed into working in production offices and doing stuff. As when she had a baby, she just didn't want to be doing the physical stuff anymore. But all of a sudden became this thing with, okay, now how do we deal with both of us being in the film industry? We either have to have family helping, for childcare, or you have to have a full-time nanny. So there's no, you have to, make your plans, that are realistic, to be able to do it. So yeah, it's doable. And I've known a lot of people who are in it, and it's different if somebody's a writer or a producer or a director, and they have time off, in between things. There are ways to manage it, but for the people who are on the shooting crews doing it, that's almost impossible. It's very difficult.
Yeah. I just asked my wife to bring us up some waters. I'm starting to feel dry in the throat. So she might go get some waters here in a second. Yeah. Like I sit there and think all the time, all the beautiful things that the film industry gave me. And I feel fortunate enough that it hasn't taken anything from me. I've worked with, keys and grips and stuff like that, that they totally didn't really like their home situation. So they would find any reason to stay at work.
Seen that.
Yeah. But man, that's like, it's pretty cool. I think that when I think about new people coming in, I always am asked, what's it like or how to explain it. And I think you summed it up pretty good with like what people should expect, Thanks, babe.
It's just people at least understanding. Like friends of mine will call me all the time and say, oh, my cousin or somebody just got out of film school. What advice do you give? And I'm like, it's tough to say, because most of what film school is about is not working on set as a grip electrician or, a crew member. It's more towards producing, directing, director of photography, camera work. It's not. So you had that education, which is useful, but not for on-set people. Now you have to go learn the equipment, and you have to, I'll tell people, go work in an equipment company for a while.
Yeah.
Learn the type of equipment. You're going to interact with the people who are coming in to get the equipment, because our business, you have to be proficient to a certain extent with what you do, but so much of it is based on, do you know anybody who's going to hire you?
Yeah.
So you have to start learning some people and getting, you're either going to get a job because somebody recommended you, or you met somebody that's going to give you a break to come out. But it's very rare that you get a cold call to come out and nobody knows you and you were just a name that somebody picked up off of a list somewhere. It just doesn't happen. So first you got to learn the equipment, then you got to learn some people and meet the people. And so much of our business is a people referral business. And that's what they don't get. That's like, yeah, you went to film school and that has some value in certain things. But now that if you want to come be an on-set person, you're starting over.
Yeah.
And you need to learn how to act on set, what the etiquette is.
I was just about to talk about the etiquette. Like there's an etiquette.
Oh yeah, there's a whole way of working. And
for rigging, for set, there's definitely an etiquette. And how long do you think it takes a rookie or somebody that just gets into the industry they're working their first 3 days on a big production, like, and they ask you how things go, you really want to let them know, like, hey, man, this is how things go. You should react or treat situations in this way so they get an etiquette. Because I feel like it took me a long time. It took me like 6 months to understand the etiquette. Because I remember getting hired on and people were upset with me because my relative was picking me up. He was uh, doing the rig gaffing, and they thought like there was nepotism. Because for starters, I'm a believer in nepotism. It's just you have to know the right people in your circle to pick.
Nepotism gets you in the door, but then at some point you have to show
Yeah.
that, because if you don't, then it gets known pretty quickly. And then it's hard. Like I said, it's very important to have the whole group, together. And if you're brought in and you don't pull your own weight, it gets to be a divisive thing that's going on. So I've seen it work. I've seen it backfire. And especially, and then you have one of two things. The relative who brings you in is either usually incredibly hard on you, harder on you than everybody else, or unbelievably lenient and lets you get away with everything. And that's the kiss of death, because nobody on the rest of the crew is gonna respect you. So there's a period where, no matter what, just like in any business, you got to earn your chops, and there's a period of indoctrination in there. But generally, it takes a couple of movies for a couple TV shows. It's more about how many days you're working overtime, but it's going to take you 6 months of working time. That could take 2 years, that could take 6 months. I don't, depending on how much you get. And also it depends on how open you are to learning. Are you a person that thinks, oh, I got this all figured out, or you're going to sit back and you're going to watch and figure out and ask enough questions for the things you don't understand? So many people come into the business, and I always tell guys when they're green, when they come in, I go, look, it's perfectly fine for you to tell me you don't know. If I ask you to do something and you don't know what I'm asking you to go get or asking you to do, what's not acceptable is for you to nod your head like you do and walk off like somehow divine intervention is going to come in and you're going to learn what that is on the way. I can deal with getting somebody else to do it or having somebody show you what it is. I just need to know that. Don't be afraid to tell me you don't know what I just asked you for. We call things weird names that takes a while for people to learn. That should be a
whole topic.
And regionally, people call things different. Even in our own business, there's things people will say, and I'm like, what was that you just said? I don't know what you just called for. Oh, this is what we call that. Oh, we call it something totally different.
They call that there's like the LA, the New York standard, and then it's kind of mixed in between.
We had so many things. I've worked with crews that were one crew that was out of Phoenix, Arizona. They had a couple of names for things for a piece of equipment we hadn't even seen in Florida yet. And they called it something strange. That was their name for it, but it wasn't what the industry called it. And for a while afterwards, we were asking for stuff and people were like, we're looking for this everywhere and we can't find it. Turns out it was just what that crew called it. And because it was new to us, we picked it up and thought that's what everybody called it. And we had a couple of weird things, a stand that was like that and a clamp that was like that we thought we knew the name of it, and it just happened to be what this one crew called it.
It was like the duckbill, the platypus, the clapper. Like there's I mean, it is funny to get with
well, that thing, what you just called the duckbill, when the term we were exposed to it when it first came out, have no idea what this came from. They called it an onky bonk. So we're like, an onky bonk, okay. And it was new to us, the clamp with the baby pin on it to hold beadboard, and nobody knew what we were asking for when we were calling for it. So, and then there was a stand that came into South Florida, and what is known as the Mambo Combo, the big tall stand. Well, the first ones we saw came into South Florida. On the big leg stamped into it was Sequoia. Made sense. Sequoia is a big tree, big stand. We thought they were called Sequoia stands. We called them Sequoia stands. We finished that whole show that we were doing with these stands. The next show, when we tried to order them, nobody could. We can't find any Sequoia stands. We don't know what you're ordering. We looked in every category. Turns out that stand was stamped Sequoia because it came from Sequoia Studios in Northern California. Had nothing to do with the name of the stand. We just assumed that was the name of it.
It's a fitting name too.
Yeah, it fit. That's if it would have been something different, maybe somebody would have asked the question, but didn't. We just
That's actually a more beautiful name.
We've seen that happen. New York crews call things different things. LA calls things different things. Then you get Canadians, and the real fun used to be when we were at a commercial house, and there would get like an Italian crew was coming in to do a commercial, and they sent an order in, and the guys would come up to us like if we were there putting equipment together for a show, and they'd go, "Hey, what do you think this stuff is?" And they would we'd all sit there trying to figure out what the Italians ordered, and because they called them totally different things. It was hilarious.
That's actually a really interesting thing to think about too, because like the day of like traveling for movies and TV shows now is kind of smaller than it ever been, um, and you don't get that opportunity to work with people, from different areas. Like you might work with people from LA because most shows start from LA, but if you go to New York, or if you go to Pittsburgh or Chicago, you know, very rarely are you ever going to get that anymore because productions they start in California and then they set up shop in a different city. I always thought to myself, why hasn't Atlanta, like Tyler Perry, his I'm not sure what his model is, but he seems to be doing something that is at least there's work when there wasn't work. He's always doing something. Why isn't Atlanta doing more of that?
Well, Tyler Perry is a different entity where he pretty much controls everything he does.
Mm-hmm.
He's producing his own shows. He's doing things. He's got his own system of how he does
Mm-hmm.
things. So there's not a lot of people that are like that, that are sometimes the talent in the show.
Mm-hmm.
They're the producer or the director, and they are the one that says yes or no. He is all those positions in one. So he gets to do whatever he wants to do. He's been successful at doing what he's doing. So there's just not many people in that model. For a while we had the Clint Eastwood movies. He did
Mm-hmm.
his stuff his way and his different things. There was a few of those people, but there's fewer and fewer of that now because it's much more corporate business than it is. So Tyler Perry's able to do things his way because he doesn't have to answer to anybody. He's the one that makes all the decisions in his productions. He's pretty much a very and he does things of decent size. So he's not doing little tiny things.
Sure.
There's small little groups that do it, but
Mm-hmm.
people doing things of some size, he's a rarity.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, usually there's a whole group of people that have to go through and like, we'll want to we'll get tasked with a something to build or to do. And we'll say, okay, this is how we want to do it. So we need this equipment, this many guys. It has to go to a couple of people. Somebody has to approve it. Usually 2 or 3 people
Mm-hmm.
have to see it and sign off on it. So it's rare that you get one person that can say yes or no to something, and you don't have to worry about anybody contradicting it or having any other input into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, because LA does it. LA has people living in LA. Maybe because of how beautiful it is in LA.
But he owns the facility he's
Yeah.
working at. He's the producer and the creator a lot of times, and sometimes the writer. He's controlling all those aspects.
Yeah.
You just generally don't have that in too many places. So
Yeah.
it's much more a corporate structure and hired. And sometimes the directors are brought in. Sometimes they have power. Sometimes they don't. So sometimes the producers have more power than the director. It's rare that you have somebody that is the one-stop
Yeah.
shop for all those questions. And he has the facility, and he's got stages, and he's got other buildings built on his property
Mm-hmm.
and different things, so he can control a lot of things in his area without even leaving his property.
Yeah. It is magnificent to think that he's built that, and it would have never have happened if he just didn't say, "I'm doing it. I'm just going to get going. I'm going to do this, do it my way." And people, I hear so many different stories about whether if they're good or bad for Tyler Perry. And I said to some people who talk about him, like whether if it's like they're saying something negative or whatever, I'm like, yeah, but he's doing it. He is doing it. There's nobody else out there in Atlanta that I know of that is finding the financing for the film, for the project, writing um, a project that might be, I don't want to say it's worthy, but like it's catching attention that it can be brought to the forefront. It's like it's really, really hard to get projects made because, well, California has all of that pool. It's still, I'm going to California to make it big in the film industry. It's not, I'm going to Atlanta. I wonder what would it take to make it like, I'm going to Atlanta because I want to be in TV or I want to be in movies. Like, how long do we
Well,
have?
you can to a degree.
Mhm,
The problem is in what part, as a director, as a director of photography, as a talent,
mhm,
because there's still a part where the financing is in LA or New York.
mhm.
The casting agents are out there, and so a lot of them are casting it, for the main parts, and then
Yeah,
there'll be local casting companies that will do, the lesser parts or background people. So it just depends on what part of the industry you want to be in, and it's possible to succeed in just about any place. It's just your chances might be fewer and far between at different places because of it. But you know, he, I just read a story that Cat Williams, the comedian,
mhm,
is because he saw what Tyler Perry did with buying the army base.
mhm.
He bought one in Alabama, and he wants to make a production company and create sound stages and do it because he said, "I saw Tyler Perry do it. I'm going to try to do it in Alabama."
Yeah, that if I remember correctly, it's not too far away from Atlanta. He's hoping to pull from Atlanta talent pool.
I I don't remember what area of Alabama, but none of Alabama is that far from
Yeah,
Atlanta. So I mean, it's very possible that he can pull from some of that.
yeah,
Shoot, even for our union, we cover. I think Alabama is covered
yeah.
under our group. So it doesn't. It's just interesting that he said he saw somebody he wants to emulate, and he's trying to follow the same pattern of what he wants to do.
Yeah.
He wanted to find a big, the benefit of buying of these military bases that they have buildings on them.
Yeah.
So now you don't have to build the building from scratch. You just have to
He
soundproof it and turn it into
he said
what
he
you want.
he built that, or I'm sorry, he bought that place like 10 years ago too, right? Because
I don't know. I just heard this. If you never know with an interview, are you hearing
yeah,
something that just happened, or was this 6 months ago? I don't know.
yeah,
It was just news to me that he was talking about how he saw somebody be successful, and he says, "Well, I'm going to emulate
yeah,
what he did."
yeah.
So
Because I heard
now
it.
I don't know that he has any film background. At least Tyler Perry
Mhm,
was already involved in films when he did it, so it made sense. So
mhm.
I mean, now that once you're an entertainer, you're in the business. So I'm sure he's done some productions and some different things, but I don't know whether he has any agreement that Tyler Perry's going to help him out or any of this. But I found it interesting, at least, that he said,
Yeah,
I saw something that's successful in one place, so I'm going to try to emulate what he did.
yeah,
It's like I'm not inventing something new. I'm just trying to create what I've seen somebody be successful at.
yeah,
So there are people out there trying to go like, oh, how can I take advantage of this as well? But yeah, it's um, that's a whole different level that I would love to say I understand what they're doing at that end, but I don't know the business from that end as far as how you get productions done, how you get the distribution, where you get them on air. That
yeah.
I have no understanding
Different world, a
of.
different part of the. That's like the dark side of the moon of film industry. But I think that's really, it's a good perspective. Like every talent pool, like you go to Pittsburgh, they have a talent pool. Chicago has a talent pool. Places you don't even think of, like New Mexico, they do a lot of filming in New Mexico. There's a good
Hmm.
talent pool there too.
Yeah.
Um, and I hear of like all these like awesome places that have all these good talent pools and uh, people who are from New Mexico that are here. Once again, they're always like, Bob, how do you stay so positive? Because like I haven't worked in 9 months. I'm like, you haven't worked in 9 months? Like you didn't go flip a burger or
Mhm.
something? Like, what are you not doing? Like, I can't like, and it's just like, no, no, it haven't worked. And I don't know how they do that. You know, me, I have so many other different outlets to stay employed,
Mhm.
you know, and all of my other jobs allow me to come back to the film industry. And my wife and I, we kind of made it that way.
Mhm.
Not a lot of people have it that way, but
Yeah, it's something you have to map out and understand and
mhm,
how you're doing. But there's a lot of people in the film business that have to figure out another side hustle to
mhm,
do something while, to make some money in between jobs or doing things. But that's, like I said, the trickiest part is staying viable so that you can still be in the business when it comes back. Because
yeah,
most even part-time jobs that you want to go to, they're not anxious to hire somebody that they know at the drop of a hat is going to jump as soon as something else becomes available.
yeah,
So it's a tough thing to do, but something, you know people have to put some thought into. It's like, how, is there another way I can make some money, while this is going on? But it's a tough thing to do. It's like, but everything also depends on how you work in the business. There's some jobs you can work at that you can work 6 months out of the year and make
yeah.
enough money to be viable, depending on, how much, what your lifestyle is. Well, we used to always laugh at people as oh, I've got a TV show for 9 months. Okay, well, then that show's going to stop for a while and be off. So the key is to not actually live off of everything you're making that week
Yeah.
and think that that's going to be, and now you go out and you buy a new house and a new car, and then the job ends, but those bills are still there.
Yeah.
So that's the tricky part, is the people figuring out the lifestyle of how they're going to live at what point, as opposed to, or they're like, oh, we started this show, they say they're going to do this show for 5 years, and after the first year somebody at the top of the
Oh,
of the production company changes, and they're not a fan of that show, and they pull the plug on it, and you go, uh-oh.
yeah. I
I
worked
mean, it
on,
happens to actors, it happens to everybody in the
yeah,
business. It's not just us, it happens to a lot of other people.
on Mindhunter, they fired the camera department. They fired a couple actors. They fired a couple other departments, all within the first like month. You know, like all those guys thought they had that, you know, whole year for that one show. I worked on a show for like 2 months and it got canceled. You know, I shouldn't say it got canceled. It got relocated because, you know, our tax credit in
Mhm.
Pittsburgh at the time was not great, you know, and people do not understand that the movie industry is a rug. Stuff gets swept under it and it gets pulled from you.
There was just a job last year shot in South Florida, because they shot in the Keys, and the Keys is one of the places that's hard to recreate somewhere else.
Yeah.
They shot the first season, and it was really successful, got great reviews when it was coming out, and they were so sure they were coming back for the next year. Well, the show was approved for the second year, but they took it to Los Angeles. And what happened was, what it turns out was, Los Angeles has a part of their incentive where if the show starts somewhere else and then is brought back to LA, you get an extra 5% in the incentive.
No way.
So they had planned to shoot the first year there. Now you've shot enough stuff in the Keys where you can put pieces in to still look
B-roll,
like you're
baby.
in the Keys. But they had a plan to take it back and take advantage of the extra percentage they could get from California's tax for bringing a show in that started somewhere else.
Yeah.
And all those guys thought they were coming back for the next year, and it's like, nope, coming back.
That's so
So,
wild.
we always joke that even when we think we have a job, until we're standing in the catering line, we don't know the job. An actor could get sick, they could pull the plug. That
Yeah.
we've been on jobs. I've been on jobs that shot for a few weeks, and then they pulled the plug.
Was
And
it Black Panther where they shut down for like, I don't know, like 6 weeks because
I'm
uh
not sure. I don't remember that,
oh
but it
man.
happens a lot.
Yeah, one of the actors got hurt on a stunt. So they had to I'm not sure if it was Black Panther or what, but
I had one that happened where we shut down. Um, we When actor got hurt, we shot every scene we could shoot
mhm.
with him, without him, and then we couldn't shoot anymore. We shut down for a while. That one wasn't too long. I was on another show where we were finishing up. We only had a couple weeks left to shoot, um, or maybe we had about a month. And I got a call for another show. Oh yeah, I can roll right my crew right into this show, no problem. The next day, actor twisted his ankle really bad going. We had to shut down for like 6 weeks for him to get
Oh
healthy
yeah.
to finish. I had the equipment on the show. I couldn't tell them I'm pulling everything off of the show.
Yeah.
So I let my crew go, and I go, I'll get another crew. I don't want them to miss out on work, but I had to turn down the show to wait for that show to come back to shoot for 2 weeks to finish up. But it was like, I kind of get it. I would have really burned a bridge with some people who treated me really well if I would have
Yeah.
stuck it
Yeah.
to. So you kind of go like, that's a tough one.
You know what? Like Kent, Scott, and you, and a couple other folks that very happy I worked for. One of the, I guess, one of the things that are in common with everybody was the fact that like I wanted to have your back because I felt like my back was taken care of. So like uh, anything that Kent needed, even if it was like out of my wheelhouse or as far as like something I shouldn't be doing, or I shouldn't say not like shouldn't be doing, but something that's like he was like loose man or like he just needed somebody to go pick something up off the truck.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm like, I'll do it for you. Let me do it for you. Let me help you. And no matter what it was, like I wanted to put myself in and help out. And I noticed that the crews were like that. And I think that stems from, like people like you, like your demeanor, how you handle things. People like Kent, how they handle things, and Scott, like when you got that, what is that like airport test? People always talk about the airport test. If you're cool enough to hang out with for 15 minutes at the airport, you're probably cool enough to hang out with in real life. Like you guys all passed that airport test, man. You guys all have this like really cool. Uh, I'm excited to be around kind of a feel. Uh, I don't.
I've just always thought that if my crew understands that I'm gonna go to bat for them any chance I
Yeah.
get, battle for them, even if it's gonna get me in some heat. But I know they do what I need them to ask, so I'm gonna have their back. That they'll go the extra mile for
Yeah.
me, and I just have found that it just usually works that way. If the crew understands that you're gonna do everything you can for them, they'll go the extra mile for you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work out. Sometimes people are one-way streets and
Sure.
don't do it, but for the most part, and the people, and it's just something we do that, and we have a strong thing. We've always believed that the thing that differentiates us, like Scott and I, when he was starting out Cinemoves and we were doing that company was growing and stuff, we knew the people were the differentiator. Everybody can get the same equipment. Nothing stops, another guy from buying the same stuff and being able to rent the same stuff to somebody. The difference is who are the people that are there on the job, on the set that you're dealing with. That's the differentiator. First of all, they got to be competent at what they do, but they also got to be pleasant to be around in what they're doing. So when we find good people, we're trying to give those people other opportunities too. We'll see somebody that works great for us and we'll be like, hey, you guys want to do something for Cinemoves when you're in between jobs? You want to pick up some crane work or do something if they need extra guys, or do you want to do things? So they know that we're looking to give them extra opportunities for what they're doing. Just because when I get more joy out of doing something nice for somebody else rather than just something for me. I've just always enjoyed that.
I noticed that.
And it's just fun if you can find some way to reward the people rather than just the fact that you let them have an opportunity to do this job and get paid. But is there any way, oh, I can bump you up to do this, or I can send you off to do this job? Hey, you want to work on the weekend for my buddy that's doing something and you can pick up some extra money on it. If the crew knows that you're trying to help them out and maximize them and what they're doing, they're going to go the extra yard for you most of the time. And we find when we put ourselves around those kind of people, it just kind of works that way. And what we do, and Cinemoves has been a big believer in that. I try to do it with my crews and who the guys I hope they know that I'm going to bat for them every chance I get.
How much of that etiquette or that culture that you bring in like that from stems from anything like from baseball? Because like I know, like so you were a pro player, and baseball is as competitive as it comes, and there's
There
so many lessons learned there. I'm
there are
sure.
some similarities. I mean, I think part of why I liked the film business was we talked about how close we get as a crew when
Hmm.
we're on jobs. In baseball, we're traveling together. We're around our teammates more than our family most of the
Yeah.
time because half the time we're on the road and they're staying home and we're traveling, but we're around those guys all the time. So when I kind of found that kind of camaraderie in there, that felt like a very comfortable place to be. And like I always say, like for us, like if I'm getting ready to do a job or somebody's offering me, oh, we're going to send you a script so you can look. I'm like, okay, I'll read it, but I'm not that interested in it. What you don't think the script's important? I said, no, no, no. I can't affect it. I don't make my choice on the film about it
Hmm.
either. I worry about who's the director of photography I'm going to be working for, who's the gaffer I'm going to be working with, because I'm going to be working with those electricians, and who are the camera department, because that's my initial group. If that group is strong,
Hmm.
we can kind of find our way, and you kind of figure out a way to be happy in that group even when sometimes the rest of the job is not fun. But if your group is really together,
Yeah.
you can kind of insulate yourselves with it and doing it. So um, I've just kind of always kind of um, been drawn to that kind of teamwork, and that makes it fun for me. I like going to work because I like seeing those guys
Yeah.
every day. So I'm much more about the people. Yeah, you want to get paid. You want to know that certain things are done right and taken care of. But other than that, it's like I don't want to be miserable at work.
Yeah.
So I want to like the faces I see when I go to work every day. Like we had fun, even when we were
We
sitting there
did.
waiting down the street, knowing we're going to have to stop traffic. And somehow, I don't know how we're getting this equipment through all these cars to get where they need to be in the time that they want us to do it. But we're going to figure out some way how to do it. It got to be a challenge. Like, okay, we were finding our fun in that.
When you were moving us around, I just remember, oh, Vance, man. Vance was driving and I'm driving. Oh, dude. And like, I just knew that, like, I don't have to worry about anything, dude. Ross is telling me what to do and it's smooth. Like,
Thank God the police just let us do it. I just said, I'm bringing things down. We
oh,
just drove past. The guys in the cars were going like, you were driving past them and they're like, what the heck is that?
oh my gosh.
It was so funny. Some of the looks we got down, especially when we were in that one center when it was crazy and the traffic down there
Yeah.
for that part of Cleveland. Um, but it was fun too. So,
Oh,
um, but that the work can be taxing sometimes and stuff. So you got to find your fun in it,
yeah.
in what you're doing, because you can choose to be miserable out there.
It is a
There are,
choice.
you can choose to make it worse and focus on all the negative things. And sometimes the negative things happen and you just have to blow it out of your mind and go, let me go find a face that's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
So, and, when you find those people, you're like, okay, I want to make sure I got these guys around me, and
Yeah.
what I could do. So, um, but that actually kind of made it fun that the cops were letting it. They're supposed to be the ones directing traffic. They weren't doing
They didn't,
anything.
no, they didn't
They didn't
care.
do anything.
They didn't care at all. They were just like, whatever you want to do. Yeah. When movies go to Cleveland, there is a theme there. The movies tend to feel like when you're working there, you own the city. And that's a good feeling because, like, you have, once again, you have an entire city feels like the guy that has your back, you
Well,
know?
a funny thing happens with places that aren't filmed in a ton. They think the film business is interesting and cool when it comes in. Something happens when you're around a lot. People start getting, oh, it's just backing up traffic again. They don't care
They
what's
don't.
going on, so you shut down a lane on the freeway, people are going to be blowing their horn at you here in Atlanta because
Yeah.
traffic's bad enough to begin with. We had it in Miami a couple times where we shut down a freeway. uh, there's a couple of main bridges that go from the mainland on Miami over to Miami Beach, and we shut down one for a week. Bad boys. And we were going to do a huge car stunt for a week out there, and they didn't even open up overnight. We shut the highway down for a week. Well, they forgot when we finally got to shoot the first day was the first day of kids going back to school.
Oh,
People lost their minds. It was the news of the day. Helicopters were flying over, taking
that's a wild
people
one.
went crazy. And then all of the politicians who signed off on it being open acted like they didn't know anything about it and started. Then Michael Bay got mad, going like, "I'll take this movie and I'll go somewhere else,"
Oh man.
because he thought they were disrespecting him, by acting like they didn't approve everything, and it was just wild.
That happens though. That I mean, that really does happen where, you have an agreement. Like I've heard of productions having agreement with cities
Mhm.
and, it affecting the people that live in the city and they're like, "Oh, we didn't think it would go down this way." Because it's happened in Pittsburgh and, you know,
Well, what generally happens is when it's new to a certain area,
mhm,
everybody embraces it and they go crazy. And they're initially starstruck. Oh, this film is being done here, and especially if you have name stars in it.
yeah.
But then, after about a year or two, when people start hearing stories about, oh, this movie shut down this street and all of the businesses on this street got paid X number of dollars
Oh,
to be, so now they know they get paid. So they start saying no until the money starts coming up. And then the locations start getting more difficult to go to and shoot. And then it gets to be a different thing. So
yeah.
it happens over a while. Or there's certain homes that we go to a lot because of they're in a certain neighborhood, or it's a certain high end
Mhm.
house, or a house that has a big open lot in the back or something. There's some reason that you go there often. Everybody else that's not getting paid starts getting upset that it's harder to get in and out of their neighborhood. And so now the different neighbors, or they find out that, oh, this production company bought these two driveways in this house to put a motorhome in or to put craft service in. Well, the other houses are mad because they didn't get paid anything. So it runs its course for a while,
Yeah.
and then you start seeing problems. And it started to happen here in Atlanta now that film has been around for a while.
Yeah.
You go back 6, 7 years ago, everybody was much happier to see film everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, when they see the yellow signs out in certain places, they're like, "Oh gosh,
Yeah.
what's happening here?"
That is funny. There was and I haven't seen it much here. It's probably because they don't get paid here. But in Pittsburgh, we had dog walkers with yappy dogs,
Hmm.
and it's like you can't tell them not to leave. They can stand on the other side of the street, and if they got their dog going rough, 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 someone has to slip them 150 to leave, or
I used to joke I wanted to start a business called Nuisances Are Us, and I was gonna find out who was permitted to shoot where, and I was gonna go around with blowers and wood chippers and just make noise until they paid me to go away, and
oh
just go to 3 or 4 different locations a day, because as soon as something happens and you're trying to shoot sound, they look at the locations guy, go figure out who that
oh
is and get them out of here, and stuff.
we have one that's we were shooting in Vandergrift, Pennsylvania, and we were shooting a TV show called Banshee. And in Vandergrift, there's just like one main street. Everybody in Vandergrift, they're just the soul to the earth kind of people.
Mhm.
Vandergrift never really saw movies, really. So everybody that was there was just sort of appreciative of, the movie being there, or the show, the TV show. And we had a guy that ran an appliance store in Vandergrift. For some reason, he didn't get what he felt like he was owed. So we tell him when we're going to be there and when we're leaving, so like he does get that information. And like, I don't know, 30 minutes before we're like crew call, you hear, "Ring!" He's like running power saws and all this other wild equipment. And after the production assistants, I don't know how many times, goes over and says, "Hey, will you please, turn that off? Here's, the contract that you signed originally." He was upset because like he didn't want to honor the contract because apparently, the two businesses that were closer to the actual set was considered to be like a hot set, so they got paid
Mhm.
differently. And
That's what happens.
sound guy, um, he he figured out a way.
Mhm.
He figured out a way to like, don't worry about the saws anymore. We got it. We got it handled.
We've had locations people get in trouble because they've fed dogs peanut butter to keep them from barking, and owners going crazy that anybody gave any food. Oh yeah, there's all sorts of problems that we've run into. It's uh it's pretty interesting what different people have done to try to facilitate being able to shoot sound at certain times.
Do you have a favorite like story, like industry story that you like to share?
Gosh,
I know there's a lot of them. I know. I
I
mean,
wouldn't even know where to start.
yeah. Oh man.
There's, depending on the circumstances, there's just so many things that have happened over the years that are wild. But I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I'd
Yeah.
have to give that some thought. But it's just interesting what I mean. There's been shows I've been on where you scout something at the beginning of the movie. You're going to shoot the movie for 3 or 4 months, and then when you come to that location, the location doesn't look like that anymore. We did one in Detroit, and we came down where we're going to do this walk and talk with a bunch of kids walking down the street. We get there, the whole street's torn up. It's all under construction. And we're like, how are we doing that? That's like, um, and so, you have to figure out ways to shoot around things and stuff. But it was like, you know, um, we did one movie, and the one I did in Pittsburgh, we went to this like rock quarry area. But when we scouted, it was, I'm going to say it was still end of summer. But when we came back to shoot at the end of the movie, it was fall. All the leaves were, everything looked different, which is impossible to prepare for when you do it. But I remember the director coming to me and going, I don't know what I'm doing. It doesn't look like any, and this was a crucial end of the movie scene. And he was like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And they had gotten, these were Swedish directors, and they had gotten used to letting me have a lot of input into what we were going to shoot.
Yeah, yeah.
And they go, just go find us a shot. And we had a crane built and everything. So they let me go run a rehearsal. I showed them something and we shot it. And I go, like, it was so much fun. Like I got to design, how where we were bringing the talent in from and what we were looking at. But there's some things you just can't prepare for.
Yeah.
There's times we've gone and like a tree in a backyard was a big deal. And we get there and they cut it down. And it's like, where's the tree? And they go, oh, well, we cut it down a couple weeks ago. And we're like, that's why we were coming here. So, we've seen all sorts of different things happen that you can't, control. And then you just have to come up with, the best thing you can do. And what's funny is a lot of times, if you talk to a lot of directors and people in different shows, things that happened that totally messed up their plans, what they did in its place became the standout scene of the movie.
Interesting.
It is bizarre.
Interesting.
Sometimes, so I got to a point where I would like to ask directors when we get close to the end of a film, like, okay, when you were prepping this, you were looking at the script, what scene that you thought was going to be gold that turned out to be nothing or less than? And what scene did you think was just like a little connective piece, wasn't anything, and an actor did something, or the scene just became something else? And it was always so interesting, the kind of responses you would get, because what it looks like on paper and what it is when you film it, especially in comedies, can be so totally different. And I was amazed sometimes that the iconic scenes that you think there was some great story behind it, that you planned this, it was like, no, this happened. It totally screwed up what I had planned. And this was the best we came up with. And it turns out to be iconic.
Yeah.
It's like the classic story of Jaws. You never saw the shark. You heard the music. And, well, you never heard the shark because it never worked.
Yeah.
They couldn't get the thing to work. So they had to start shooting something. So they just realized that we'll just have to make this music let you know that the shark may be coming close to scare you, but we're not seeing it.
Yeah.
And not seeing it made it so much scarier.
Oh man. Yeah. That's so true.
And that was totally because they couldn't make the shark work.
Yeah. I think like 80 romantic movies kind of did that too with like the sensual scenes. Like they didn't show you stuff and let your imagination just
Yeah, it was like
feed.
how come you like books sometimes more
Yeah,
than the movie? Because in your movie you created all the pictures. You're reading the words, but you're your own
yeah,
production designer. You made the choices on what everything looked like, what the characters looked like even. That's remember when people freaked out that when Tom Cruise played Jack Reacher
yeah,
because the
yeah. Because
character's
he was,
supposed to be
yeah,
huge and he's short, you know. I didn't read the book, so I didn't have that feeling. A gaffer I worked with loved the Reacher books, and he went
yeah,
nuts when Tom Cruise was in it. And I go, why? He played a great character. He's like, no, he's supposed to be huge. I didn't know.
yeah. Jack Reacher filmed in Pittsburgh. I worked
Hmm.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That actually was filmed right after we got done shooting with Tom Cruise on Rock of Ages,
yeah,
and I was trying to get that job going in. They had already crewed it up by the time I found out about it and stuff.
yeah,
Um, but it was because I had done a movie in Pittsburgh, and after did the movie in Pittsburgh, a producer I knew called me and said, "Hey, I just want you to know we got another movie in Pittsburgh. I'd love to bring out, but I can't. There was like one known really good grip crew, and they were available." And I go, "I get it.
yeah,
I understand. You can't bring
yeah,
somebody in if you have somebody available that's can do the job."
yeah. All the grips in Pittsburgh are they're got that rock and roll background. Yeah, they know what they're doing. There's a
Well,
lot of good
so
talent.
much of the non-traditional filming places
Yeah.
were stagehand locals before they were ever film
Yep.
locals. Our local, we didn't get a film local until Miami Vice was shooting in the mid '80s.
Yeah.
That's when the film. Up until then, it was all stagehand locals, and so a lot of those places that you go to that aren't L.A., New York, Chicago,
Yeah.
were filled with stagehand guys. So it was guys who grew up as stagehands and then kind of morphed, and then you
Yeah.
had the film guys. And if there was enough work, the film guys stayed film guys and didn't go back and forth. But in a lot of the towns, guys went back and forth
Yeah.
to doing stage work and film work.
Yeah. I think Pittsburgh it's still like that. Yeah. A lot of good talent in Pittsburgh for filming. I just think there's a lot of good talent here in Georgia.
Just Pittsburgh had some really cool locations. Just when
Yeah.
you got out of the city and first of all, the city looked cool with the bridges and
Hmm.
everything. That was a cool look. Outside of town, you could get into what looked like deep in the woods
Hmm.
right out of town. It was
Yeah.
like it took no time at all. The movie I did, we did a lot. We were over even into West Virginia,
Hmm.
and we were out closer to the airport, outside on the outskirts of town. But we shot out, from the outskirts to West Virginia a lot.
Yeah.
But just, gosh, some of the quarries and stuff, just really interesting locations. For horror movies, it was amazing. And we were doing kind of like a horror movie at the time. So it really fit the
Yeah.
bill.
Yeah. What was that? What was that project?
When we shot it, it changed its name. It changed its name to Six Souls. What was it called beforehand? Uh, what was it when we were shooting it? My goodness.
I'm gonna try to find it. I'd like to see it.
Because Julianne Moore was in it, Jonathan Rhys Meyers. Um, it was an interesting story. It was about a guy who was like a an evil spirit who kept getting reincarnated into different people. So
Oh.
like back turn of the century, like pre
Hmm.
1900s through like the 1930s, and it was Julianne Moore played a psychiatrist whose father was a psychiatrist that ran this mental hospital, and Jonathan Rhys Meyers was this guy who had been in reincarnated. It was an interesting story, but they changed the name, and then something happened where it went to Europe as a feature, and it changed. It never really opened in the U.S.,
Yeah.
which with name actors at the time, I didn't understand it, but gosh, I'll have to think. What did Six Souls was the name it changed to. I'm trying to remember what it started out with while we were filming it. The whole time we filmed it in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh, it was under one name, and then it got sold months afterwards when it finally got to distribution. And blanking on what the
That's
name
it.
of it
You'll
was.
remember it. You'll remember it.
But that was where I met Lena Sandgren, who was a Swedish director of photography. There was two Swedish DP directors,
Hmm.
who did a team. One would direct one day and one would prep, and then he'd direct the next day. And I thought it was going to be a mess, but they had a great system in how they did things. And it was really interesting working for them. Um, and different, but
Hmm.
very interesting.
Yeah.
And that was one of those projects where it was like you hated for it to end because it was they they allowed you to be part of the creative process, so you felt like you were a
The
part
team,
of the team making the
man.
movie, and it just made it so much fun to go to work every day.
Big question that I get all the time, because when you tell somebody you work in the film industry, they go, "What films did you see lately that you liked?" And I thought that's kind of like goofy because it's like, I don't really get a chance to watch too many films. Is there a film that,
I haven't even watched it. It's like going to the theater has gotten to be a thing that we just don't do anymore, and I hate
hmm,
it because I think there's a lot of films that you want to see in the big format,
yeah,
and I haven't been to the theater in a bit, and I feel bad saying that because I don't think it's the same experience seeing it on the TV
hmm,
as that. But I haven't been, and plus even though we just got done doing Superman and it's coming out, I never got into the Marvel world or this,
hmm,
of the I was never a comic book kid. So that was not a genre that I was into and everything. So I'm much more of the storyline,
hmm.
kind of guy. But um, boy, I feel bad thinking about the last time I went to see movies was like Oppenheimer and um,
That was fantastic.
it was interesting. I knew
I
some of
liked
the
it.
story. I didn't know the background of Oppenheimer and all of the people, but boy, when you look back, such a odd time of what we were going through
Yeah.
um, the
They had a lot of deep cuts and characters that didn't even have speaking roles really in the
mhm,
scenes, that they were the scientists that were in rooms.
mhm,
And, thank you for YouTube and people who dissect everything that comes out.
mhm,
You're able to see who is playing who, and it's like amazing. Like, wow, people are still doing a lot of homework in films.
mhm.
That makes
Well,
you happy.
I love when movies make me think or make me give me a perspective I never thought of. Like Interstellar,
Hmm.
I'm still trying to figure out what was going on in that movie, and
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of interviews with people explaining some of the stuff, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, it was like um, some of that stuff, where um, when you feel out when you figure out what was real, what was based in what they believe
Yeah.
is real science, and wasn't just taking a leap, into the movies. Um, but what was the one with Matt Damon going to Mars and where
The
he was
Martian.
left on the Martian,
Yeah.
where he was left on. Um, it's I'm not big into science fiction and all that stuff, but trying to understand what was real in some of the science movies and stuff. I find it really cool when they're as accurate as they can be with some of the stuff, especially because otherwise you leave with the movie feeling like that that's a set of reality, and you go, "Oh no, that was just something they did for the movie. That's not really based in reality." And then you go, "Yeah," you know.
Yeah.
So, um, but for me, watching movies over time, I love movies that surprise me, and sometimes that only is accentuated because of what my expectation is going into the movie. If I go in to see a movie and my expectations are sky high, it's very hard for the movie
Hmm.
to even to reach that level. Sometimes the movies I've loved the most is when I went in with lower expectations or thinking I'm going to see a certain type of movie and the movie was different than I thought.
Yeah.
I love that juxtaposition when something fools me a little bit or the movie is different than I thought it was going to be or it exceeds my expectations. That's what they leave. Those movies have left bigger marks in me. From when I was a kid, I saw a movie The Sting with Robert
Hmm.
Redford and Paul. That movie blew me away. I thought I knew what was going on in the movie. I had to go see it 2 or 3 more times to figure out what was going on. And that was way
Hmm.
pre-internet times where nobody was figuring
Yeah.
it, so
You're
you
you're
had to go
actually,
see
yeah,
it
spending that
to
money
figure out
too.
what was going on. Um, a movie, No Way Out, with Kevin
Yep.
Costner early on. The end of that movie, I just was like, I didn't see that coming at all. Um, There was a John Travolta movie called Phenomenon. That movie, I thought it was about, oh, he saw something in outer space, but it really was about what was going on and about how people reacted to somebody
Yeah.
being different. I was like, whoa, I didn't think this movie was what. So I love when movies can can not necessarily trick me, but take me in a place I didn't know it was going
Existed.
to,
Yeah.
you know. So I love that experience, and I think that is so enjoyable for me. I just enjoy those movies so much more.
Yeah.
And now in this day and age, you kind of know so much about what's going on. There's so many trailers. There's so much talk about them before they come out. Like I've purposely not known too much about. So I didn't read the script all the way through on Superman
Yeah.
because I didn't have to. I wasn't the one that was in charge of all that stuff on this one. So I was like, you know what? One time I don't want to know everything that's going on in the movie, and I want to see if I'm surprised by the final outcome. So I am looking forward to seeing this just because there's so much that was being created outside of what we were seeing, on set every day
Yeah.
while we're doing it. I want to see what some of this, what some of it comes out to be.
Yeah. Man, Superman was such a rocket ship of a ride. Like, I'm excited for that one to come out. I was excited for Electric State to come out. My family, we got to watch that. You should check it out.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people were dogging it, but me and my family, we liked it a lot. It's a little fast paced with the constant switching of screens, but man, I liked it. And for what's been coming out on Netflix and Amazon, you're not getting anything better than that right now. So,
It's interesting when you work on things and then you see the finished product.
mhm.
I am always surprised when I'm keying a project, and so I'm really involved in understanding the script and what we're doing and what we thought we were trying to produce while we were doing it. And then you see the final edit, and it always surprises me. There's always at least one scene or something that gets cut or gets
Oh, yeah.
minimized or something, and you go, I didn't see that coming. So I'm always surprised. But I purposely on Superman pulled back a little bit and going like, I want to not think I know where it's going and see if it changes the my enjoyment or perception of the film when it gets done. Um, because I find that interesting to me when I'm not really when I see something different, or I just find that I sometimes bring too much of a preconceived
Mhm.
idea to some of the films, especially the ones that I worked on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like there's still a scene in the Truman Show that was cut out that I've never got to work with the director again, and I had a good relationship with him, so I know he would tell me the truth. But it's when I saw the movie, I'm like, where did that scene go? It's like it still bugs me to this day, and I've never heard anybody explain how this scene got cut out. So it's like I experience films different than everybody else because of the
The inside.
when we're really intimately involved with what's
Yeah.
going on, you're having a different experience than somebody just watching it, from the outside. So a lot of times people will look at me and go like, why were you upset with that movie? I go, it's too long of a story to tell you why. But it's fun to see what you see the actors doing every day and then what makes the screen and what's the final product look like. And I thought Nick, who played Lex Luthor,
Mhm.
I thought he did an awesome job while I was on,
Yeah.
so I'm anxious to see what that character looks like on screen because I thought he did a really good
Yeah.
job. um, it was it was a tough shoot on a lot of those guys and certain things, when the sets are so fanciful and so big and so I'm just those are the kind of things that get my attention. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to see how this comes up. I thought he did a really good job and want to see how he does. I'm anxious to see how a new Superman is perceived by the public.
I'm waiting. Yeah. Like what? Man. Because that's a heavy role. It's
No,
been done so
it's so
many.
iconic and it's
Yeah.
different people. It's like, but trying to predict what the public is going to react to is so hard to tell.
His eyes on Superman, or James Gunn's eyes on Superman, the way he's doing it too. At least it's being told. Like we haven't seen that story yet. So
It's a different perspective,
yeah,
that's for sure.
yeah, that perspective is
And that's what I'm interested to see too, is how because normally you need young people to see a movie a bunch of
sure.
times to be successful. How are young people gonna react to this is kind of a different take on the Superman character? Well, a little bit. There's
Mhm.
certain themes that are there, but I'm interested to see how the public takes it, because just how many people are going to see movies, how
Yeah,
successful is it going to be, and what is the response going to be to it. It's um and it's taken the story to a different place, and they're doing different things. It's just movies are so hard to predict how the public is going to react to them. You
yeah,
think like, oh, you take name stars and a name director and great script and put it together, you can't
mhm,
miss.
yeah,
We've seen misses.
yeah,
So
we
it's
have.
such a hard thing to predict. The art form is so, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it, and there'd be no failures in the
Yeah,
movies. But it's
and you can only trust the critics to a certain extent too. There's too many movies that I've seen critics, they pretty much dox it to be like the worst project ever,
mhm,
and then I watch it and I'm like, am I liking this for some other reason? Did
mhm,
someone not see what I just saw?
yeah.
Like in all the YouTube, I mean, the Siskel and Ebert days of movies are gone. So now you get a lot of YouTubers that they have this Apple box to stand on, and this like
E-
this microphone is
Everybody's got an opinion out there, and
yeah,
um, I generally, it's amazing how many times I've loved movies that critics have hated.
yeah,
It's so it almost scares me when the critics are loving it too much,
mm,
because I'm like, this is giving me a weird feeling, because it's normally the other way around. And I tell you, I had the strangest in Canada when I was playing baseball. We went to see a movie one afternoon, like noon on
mhm.
a Wednesday. We were out of town playing, and Flashdance came out.
Oh,
And I don't even remember if we went to see it with great expectation or anything else. It was just like, hey, we're gonna kill time. Let's go see a movie.
hmm,
And it was the middle of the week, early in the day. Nobody's in the theater. We're sitting there, me and two other baseball players, is what I remember, and there was two guys in front of us. And after a while, they were talking, and we were the only. There was only five people in the theater,
hmm,
and we were in one row. They were next, and you start hearing them talking back and forth, like they're criticizing the movie and doing different stuff. So I started wondering if they were critics, if they were newspaper critics, and they still had that back in the 80s.
yeah.
Turns out they were radio critics. They were
Oh,
working on radio shows and everything. And we saw the movie, and there were some things in that movie I had never seen breakdancing before.
hmm,
At the beginning of that's the first time I ever
yeah,
saw certain things, and so, not saying it was a great movie, but it was a interesting movie.
yeah.
And I was early 20s at the time, and these guys were killing it, like it was the worst thing they ever saw, and like other than her rear end was the only thing they've said positive about the movie. And
The
I'm like, the music, the dancing, none of that got you. None of that seemed interesting to you. I
the
was
way
just
the way that was shot was kind of new too. Like,
no. It wasn't a movie you had seen before.
mhm,
A sensibility was different and everything. And this working girl in Pittsburgh that was a welder, but
yeah,
she was a dancer. I was like, okay, you know, um, but I just couldn't believe they found nothing positive to say about it. And I just have always remembered that experience,
yeah,
going like, wow, we just thought we were young people, and we just thought we saw something that was interesting that we hadn't seen before.
yeah,
Not the greatest movie ever made, but certainly an enjoyable film that young people would
yeah.
want to go see. And they were going to kill it. And I was just like, I'm just it was just a realization as a young person, going like, boy, people's perspectives can be all over the place on things. So
Yeah, that's pretty wild. But it looks like we have a friend in here. What's up, buddy? All right, man. Sorry, I had to stop us for a second. But yeah, dude, the insight that you have on just the outlook in the film industry, I really enjoy. And we could wrap this up, and I just want to say thank you for coming out, and hopefully we can do it again sometime whenever you're free again.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
We like hanging out and talking anyway. We always find
Yeah.
something to talk about. So it was, but yeah, it's interesting the different perspectives on the business and everything. But it made it a lot more enjoyable when we had a group of people that we liked being together with and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
that's the part I take most away from Superman was good group of people. I love, and I love it when Grip and Electric get along
Yeah.
and the camera department get along. It's like that's what I, take away from it. It's like I love those interactions with the people, and I hate when we all separate. Even though we're in the same town, it's like everybody goes on to their own lives, and you check in every once in a while, and it's like you just don't see each other enough anymore.
Yeah.
So it's always good to see some of the people that we enjoyed being around so much.
Yeah. I got to come your way. So next time we hang out, let me come your way. And I don't know, you have a figure out to a restaurant we'd like to go try out or something.
Yeah, well, there's always something to do. There's always something to do. That's for sure.
Well, cool. Well, thanks to everybody tuning in. And, this is our kind of like first run at this podcast thing. It's, something new to me. And thank you, Ross, for coming in. And next time, tune in. And Ross will be back, I'm sure.
Look forward to it.
All right. Thank you.